Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the show. Today is Wednesday, the 13th of May, 2020. And glad to have you guys here. Now, listen, I see something brewing right now. Well, I've seen it for a while now. That is so enormous. The impact could be so enormous when it starts to really manifest itself. In the United States of America right now, let this sink in. It's probably about 40 million people have just lost their jobs. And it continues to grow. Now, what we've done is we've reached the level of joblessness of the Great Depression of the United States. If you can imagine that. We've reached it, and now we're surpassing it. We're going beyond it. And there's no end in sight for this. It's just, everything's just falling off a cliff. There's no end in sight because this relentless thing, this monster that's causing it to happen, is not giving us any relief. It's got the gas pedal to the floor, and so we're heading into this thing. We're heading deeper into this. So what's happened is we've passed the old Great Depression levels, and now we're going deeper. But the full effect hasn't been felt yet because it happened so quickly. And we went from we had a pretty good economy. It's perking along pretty good. We went into this so suddenly that we haven't really felt the full effects of this yet, but it's monstrous and it's growing larger. And when we do feel the effects of I heard a study done years ago where they did a study on people and how people react to when people will revolt or when people will basically lose it. And in the study, they said that it came down to food in the end. The people basically start to really lose it when they can't feed themselves and they go hungry. And they don't go hungry for very long. Well, there's enormous problems coming on the working people, the working sector. And for each one of these people that's lost a job, I can just bet it probably impacts more than just the one person. It probably impacts two or even more people are impacted. So if right now, say 40 million are without work, and it increases to 50 million soon, it'll be 100 million that'll be impacted. These people, when they start to go hungry, well, they just might start losing it in mass. This could be if this isn't handled correctly by the ones who are in administration, like the Fed and so on, if this is not handled correctly, and what the Fed's doing up till now, really, they're only giving the people a token, and they're reserving most all that stimulus money for their big buddies on Wall Street. Basically, everybody gets another bailout. Hooray, they were already full of money anyway. What do they need more for? It's the people who need the money, and they're not doing near enough. And this thing, it could all start to disintegrate. I mean, what's the sense of having a Wall Street, having the stocks go up on a corporation if the corporation's already bankrupt and the stocks are still going up? If the Main Street economy, if the real general economy that supports everything is crumbling, eventually what's above it, what it's supporting, is going to come down too. It'll all collapse. The whole thing. The whole house of cards. And if it all collapses, what would it take to get it back going again, Think if everything collapsed. Utterly collapsed. You say, well, what does that mean, collapsed? It means that even infrastructure could come to a stop. Everything. There could be widespread rolling power outages and mass mayhem and chaos. And, we saw during Katrina what happened, with the military and stuff. Now, Katrina came in and it made landfall, and I think several states, the bordered on several states. But really, if you looked at the actual hurricane wind damage area, it was actually a very small area of the United States. it encompassed it, the wind damage area, and it was all they could do to try to control that one little region. I mean, if you're looking at a map of the United States, it'd probably only be a region the size of the tip of Florida, just the area, probably the equivalent of maybe from Miami up to about Lake Okeechobee, up to the middle of Florida, an area about that big. That's what Katrina impacted. But it was like centered between several states, It wasn't that big of an area, but it was a huge problem for the government to try to control that region. And effectively, they sort of lost control over it, just that small region. Now, can you imagine if it's that kind of problem across the entire United States of America in every state? They would be too far stretched. They wouldn't be able to. I mean, just saying, okay, well, we'll send out the National Guard or we'll send out the military or whatever, to try to quell this issue. Once it gets entirely out of control, they would be too far stretched. And then we would all be on our own at that point in time. And then who's gonna bring order back? Who's gonna restore order if it's lost? Now is the time. Now is the time to take action. The people need support. The people need more than just a $1,200 check. Because think about it. They had their job. Now they don't have their job. How far is that $1,200 going to go? When food prices are going up daily like mad, and if you get too many people, too big of a situation to handle, and it falls out of control. Once it's fell out of control, then what do you do? How do you get control back? If it's too big an area, too widespread. Oh yeah, you could take control back after all the people are gone. Then you just have to go in and get the power grid turned back on. And you could get power back, you could get control back that way because there's nobody left to that's out of control. There'd be no people left. Unless people can all support themselves. You don't want to let this situation fall off the cliff so far that there's no bringing it back anymore. Because we live in an immoral, degenerate society that's on meds, basically. And nobody is set up to support themselves, really. I mean, okay, we have a few people who set themselves up, gone out into the country, and they've went off grid or whatever, and they have the pig pen, and they have some goats and chickens and a little garden or whatever, and they got maybe a room in their back room that's all full of food and everything stored away for themselves. Well, if this country falls to pieces, completely falls to pieces, we got a number of other extenuating problems, and people would start to roam in mobs. And these people who did supply for themselves and who are ready. See, I'm going to tell you guys something. Easter Island. The people who live there, the population there, at one period in ancient history swelled. The population swelled in Easter Island. They had a lot of trees and stuff. They were cutting the trees down and they were farming and they had good times. They had a population grew up to a certain point, where where it was almost what you'd say overpopulated. And then what happened is they cut the last trees down, and the farming started to. There was too much population for the island to support the population. And what happened was is chaos broke out. And the people were all looking for food. They were all hungry. So that every time the farmers would go to farm, they'd raid them. Right? And they would go in, they would take everything that they have and trample everything, and they would eat it and stuff. Well, it kept going this way, and so the farmers weren't able to farm anymore. The people didn't have any food. In the end, they were resorting to things, unmentionable things that they were doing on Easter Island. And in the end, the population kept dwindling down, and each man's hand was against his other man's hand, They were all fighting with each other over the last few scraps of food right down, and then the population over a period of time kept dwindling, until finally in the end there was just a handful of them left. Just a few people sitting around the table left. That's all. It was the only survivors. It's almost like these shows, like Survivor, where they first go into the island, they're all happy and everything. There's like 30 of them or whatever, and then the first thing you know, there's 28, and then 26, and then 20, and it keeps going that way until there's only one guy left. Is that the kind of world we want? And would that one guy even survive? Because how would he maintain hundreds and hundreds of nuclear power plants that you can't turn off? You can't turn the blooming things off. They overheat and melt down. And it's called the China syndrome. Because basically, I guess the reactor core melts all the way down to China, and it makes a big plume of radiation up into the air behind it. And it just burns that way and keeps spewing the radiation behind it, polluting a wide area. Well, you got hundreds of them things all over the place. Control has to be maintained. And this means that they've moved themselves in a certain direction where the money supplies went exponential. You just can't decide, well, okay, we're not going to print exponential amount of money to keep up with it. Otherwise, all of a sudden, you'll get a sudden deflationary shock. And that's where we're headed right now. We're headed toward a deflationary shock of a magnitude that is unparalleled. Because this thing has come so fast that we haven't felt the shock wave from it yet. Just like an explosion, a nuclear bomb, nuclear blast goes off, and you see the shock wave. You can look at the black. Well, if you have to cover your head because of the amount of amazing heat and stuff that comes off of it and everything. But you can see the shock wave, and it's heading towards you. Well, that's what's happened here. We are viewing this crisis like we're watching it on TV and stuff, and we see the shock wave, but the shock wave hasn't hit us yet. The shockwave's coming from what's just happened. It's happened so fast that the shockwave hasn't hit us yet. Okay, I'm getting carried away here a little bit, but I'm very worried and very concerned about what's happening right now. And as far as they talk about the second wave of this virus, they say, it's coming next fall. I don't think so. I think the second wave's coming in the next few weeks. Now that they've opened the economy, it's starting to open the economies up again, that thing's just lurking out there, waiting to pounce. And what's the effect going to be on the economies if they have to lock them up again? It's going to be absolutely devastating. Anyway, let's get the charts open right here, and let's take a look at what's going on. We're going to start with the silver price today. 1543 for silver. It hasn't moved up or down. Well, okay, now it's down a penny, 1542. Gold today, $17.10. It's up $9.10 on the day. So even widening the gap even more between gold and silver. The gold to silver ratio is even becoming wider if it wasn't already wide enough. Let's take a look at cryptocurrency. 247.6 billion, 67.2% Bitcoin dominance, with a Bitcoin price of $9,058. The Dow Jones today is down 485 points to just over 2%, 23,279 for the Dow. And let's check crude oil. Crude oil is down $1.16 on the day, 25.48. U.S. Treasuries. Now we're looking at Treasury yields falling all the way across the board. Five basis points on the U.S. 30-year, and the U.S. 30 years at 1.32, and the U.S. 10 years at 0.64% for the U.S. 10-year. And let's finish up on the dollar index. It's 100.14 for the U.S. dollar index. So there we have basically what's going on with the markets. All this, I'm telling you, I just don't know which way this whole thing's going to turn right now, but it's really, we're in a position for what could become very, very scary times. With about 40 million people out of work. I mean, this is unparalleled. You can't even compare this to the Great Depression era. But it's happened so fast, we haven't felt the shockwave yet. It's coming. It's coming. The shockwave is coming, and that's what I'm scared of is a loss of control of the system. Because the disaster is the magnitude hasn't really been felt yet, and it's scary what's happening, and it's continuing to get worse, and it's worldwide. Uh, this is unparalleled in human history, I think. Never been a situation like this before, and we're going. If it depends on how much longer it continues or whatever, just what the impacts is going to be and everything. It's too difficult to try to figure it out exactly what's going to happen, but it's really looking bad. You know. Thank you guys for listening. Give me a thumbs up, and we'll catch you guys in the next show. Bye bye.